Because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons, and eventually I did turn to cannibalism.
Show featured on Netflix about Jeffrey Dahmer has become a big hit. For those of you who haven't watched it yet and wonder who he is, I'll shortly describe his life and the gruesome crimes he committed. So, who was Jeffrey Dahmer? Some would say he was a devil in a human body, and some would say he was an innocent-looking boy from next door. But the truth is, he was a cold-blooded murderer who didn't have any emotions toward his unfortunate victims. Let's go back to the 60s when he was not known as a Milwaukee Monster, but just as a weird small-town boy Jeffrey. He was born on May 21st, 1960 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He grew up in an intense family, as his mother suffered from extreme anxiety and tried to lift a hand on herself multiple times. And his father was rarely home due to work. And when he was, the married couple was always fighting. He showed signs of sadistic tendencies as a young boy, being in love with dissecting animals and examining the insides. Weird hobby for a 10-year-old. Surprisingly, Dahmer had medium popularity in school and was known as a class clown, performing outrageous pranks on his friends. Friends being in love with his jokes and pranks, even made a club called the Dahmer Fan Club. But after he got known as a Milwaukee Monster, former school friends were left speechless. His former friend, and author of a book called My Friend Dahmer, said the following: "Suddenly all the goofball antics and silly things we'd done became completely sinister and troubling." At the age of 18, Dahmer committed his first murder and started his spree from there. His first unfortunate victim was Stephen Hicks, a hitchhiker that got invited to Dahmer's house, where he got gruesomely murdered by Dahmer. Dahmer later told the police that the reason for it was that Stephen wanted to leave, and he didn't want him to. Dahmer wasn't a typical serial killer. He was a cannibal and had specific ways of getting rid of the bodies, which are too brutal to share on a YouTube video. So you will need to watch it on Netflix for this one. A lot of victims' parts were found in his fridge, and he himself was ingesting some of his victims. When police got into his apartment, they found pictures of people in various poses and were not giving a sign of life. That was the evidence that followed his arrest. Despite having neighbors that could notice the smell, he was doing all his brutal murders from his apartment. His neighbors described him as a little shy, but not real bizarre. Milwaukee Monster has a total victim count of 17. He was targeting the people whose appearance was less likely to be reported right away, like drug dealers and hitchhikers. His first murder happened in his grandmother's basement, and later he moved to North 25th Street in Milwaukee, where he would continue to lure his victims. If you've watched the Netflix show, you probably know that Dahmer had a collection of animal corpses, as he showed interest in opening and examining animals. His father, having an issue establishing a relationship with his son, seeing that he's showing interest in, quote, dead animal corpses, decided to show him how to clean and preserve animals' corpses correctly. On the morning of November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death in prison. Some could say this was a work of karma for all the gruesome crimes he has committed. I recommend you to watch the Netflix show for more in detail on his horrendous crimes, as I'm limited on describing them since it's very violent and graphical.